right, Chris.
How are you?
Well, I forgot a Zoom meeting and Les Latronic is very put out about it.
Well, serves you right.
He wants to know who can be held accountable for it.
Oh my God. Maybe your misery. Your misery? Your memory. Maybe your memory. Boy, oh boy. I hope you fire your memory because I'm filing a formal complaint right now
Yeah, you better.
about your memory.
Oops.
You know what? This sounds the first time to go home.
I had a family thing come up that I was very upset about, and the house should deal with it. And everything's okay now.
Good.
That's all good. That's all that matters. I'm not gonna worry about that. Les has been up on the whole, everything I do is that little meeting. And it's an organizational meeting. It's not like this meeting. You're right. No more,
I paid your salary and that is what I got.
no more excuses.
Oh,
So
my God.
sorry.
Because I, the critiquer, never, I never do it. Yeah, well, the important thing is that you face the situation involved. That's all ultimately that matters. They'll live, they'll get over it. I don't think it'll be the ambition who dies, if only she gets scared.
I'm gonna send this on. Oh.
Hey, Bob.
Hi, Susie.
Yeah.
What's new?
I had my 4-month-old granddaughter all day, so I am tired.
You had a fire? Oh, you're tired. Yeah.
Yeah, tired.
Yeah. Yeah. They take a lot of energy, don't they?
Yeah. Everything down on the vineyard okay?
Yeah, it's pretty, it's really nice. There's just too many really super rich people there that it's kind of changing the flavor of the place.
Hmm.
It's like Yogi Berra said, nobody goes there anymore. It's too crowded.
Yeah. Yep.
But out in my boat, it's beautiful out there in the ocean.
Yeah.
Hey, Jim.
Hey, Becky. Hey, Jim.
Good evening, Bob, Jim, Susie, Becky.
Bob, what happened to the capital planning committee meeting?
We didn't have a meeting because I didn't make it back in time to have the meeting, so we're having to reschedule it. I'm sorry,
Okay.
Bob.
What was that last thing you said, Becky? You said you're gonna do it when? Or
It's got to get rescheduled because I didn't get back in time to start the meeting. And I called Ellen and he's working on finding a date to reschedule.
Becky, I have a question. What buildings in town are officially designated as emergency centers?
Well, that's an odd question. What do
Well,
you?
the
emergency-
the school is, isn't it? Well, in order to be an emergency center, you know, you got generators and all kinds of things that you have to. I think there was state granting, state grants were involved in towns being able to bring a building or something like that up to the standards necessary. It's somewhat complicated, but Shutesbury does have them. I'm just not sure which ones they are, except for the school. I'm pretty sure this.
I mean, see, I think what you're talking about with the state designation, we do not have a state designated emergency center. We use the town hall and we use the fire department. But we don't, here comes Walter. Maybe he can answer your question but the meeting's starting, so.
Okay.
Yeah, I see we have 6 of us from the committee and George is not here. Did George say he was not available this week? Yeah, okay.
All that, yeah.
Yeah, okay, so we have everybody we're gonna have. So without further ado, can we call a meeting to order?
Good.
Okay. How is everybody?
Good.
Okay. We do have Walter with us, and maybe we have this agenda item regarding the fire station parking lot, the repaving project for that lot. Things didn't go, I guess, according to at least the original capital plan for that. So I think maybe since Walter's here now, maybe we can get over that now. So we're not tying up Walter for the remainder of the meeting. Unless you want to join us, you can continue. So maybe, Walter, you want to set the stage and let us know what this is all about?
All right. Originally, timeline, I'm a little fuzzy on if it's 4 or 5 years ago. Somewhere around there, we had gotten estimates to pave the parking lot. And we pretty much, the way we were doing it, because of what it fell under, if the town actually bought the asphalt, it left just the work, you know, to be done, and company, trying to think of their name now at the moment, that was willing to do it. They were only going to charge $5,000 a day, and so it would be $10,000 for the labor, and then we figured the cost of the asphalt was going to be around between 15 and 17,000. So we had gone to the town and asked for, I think I'd asked for 27, and somehow it got brought down to 25, but we figured we could still do it with that. The highway department was going to rip up the old asphalt and do the grading, and then just have the company come in and do the asphalting. Well, you know, a few things happened that year when I filed for all the Conservation Commission paperwork. They put off doing a site visit for a couple months, and then they finally came down. We did the site visit. They made some conditions that were a little bit hard to attain, and by the time we got those straightened out, the plants had closed for the year. They weren't doing asphalting anymore. Next year, Tim, I think, went in for a shoulder surgery, and then one of his guys got deployed, so he was shorthanded. Then the owner of the company that was going to do the work passed away. His wife sold the company, which meant then we had to really kind of go out to bid. Then with the whole water line project, we put everything on hold because it made no sense to go ahead and asphalt the parking lot and then dig it up to put a water line through if that's how it was going to be, which is what it ended up being. So, you know, lo and behold, here we are 4 or 5 years later. Had to renew everything with the Conservation Commission, got all that paperwork straightened out again this year. And so we put the specs back together, upgraded them, and put it out to bid. And I guess it was 2 bids that came back in, Becky.
Got 2 bids.
We, keep in mind, we've had the $25,000 set aside to do this project, which pretty much would have done it 5 years ago. The lowest bid came in at $56,816. I don't recall what the second bid was. It was in the 60,000.
It
Right.
was 61,920,
Okay.
Warner Brothers.
That was Warner Brothers, yeah. And the other one was Taylor Davis, who most of the people that worked for the old company, McLaughlin, that's the name, McLaughlin Paving, they went to Taylor Davis. So we figured, well, that's way out of the range. So we needed to talk to you guys. And then the next day, there was another company that happened to be paving a driveway just up the road here, and they blew a tire on their trailer. So they dropped the trailer off here at the fire station, and they said, is it okay if we leave our trailer here? And jokingly, I said, yeah, as long as you pave the parking lot before you leave. He said, well, you're looking to have that done? I said, yeah, but we've already been out to bid and bids have come in, so we really can't accept another bid. He said, well, let me just take the specs and bid on it anyways. I thought, well, if he came in under, then we'd look at what we were needing to do. His bid came in at 88,000. So, needless to say, the 56 doesn't look too bad compared to 88,000. So, at that point, we're still, $36,000 short what we had approved for 5 years ago. So Becky suggested that we come to you and talk to the finance committee to see if this is attainable and what's the best way to do it if we wanted to.
Yeah, Walter, just make sure you understand, like you said, we're 36,000 short, but was this a $25,000 project or a 30,000?
25. There's $25,000 sitting in a capital account waiting for it to happen.
So it's more than a $36,000 gap then, right? Or, well,
$36,816.
Okay.
okay, if we went with the higher bid, right?
Oh, if we went with the higher bid, it'd be a lot much more than that. Yeah. The lowest.
I think you said there's a $56,000
Yes.
bid. and
That's
a-
the low bid.
Yeah.
56,816. There was a 61,000 and an 88,000.
We need 31,000, don't we? Roughly.
We need $31,816.
Okay, 31, sorry. Long day, bad math.
I just want to say, I think, Walter, the capital planning, the process that we had back when this money was approved, that we went through capital planning. Capital planning recommended or approved the request, and then it went through finance for a $25,000 project. So I think if it's going to be a bigger project, it seems to me that it should go through the same process and be approved, because it's a different animal now. I mean, I know it's the same job, but it's not the same cost to the taxpayers. So I think it probably would have to go, it seemed to me that it would have to go through town meeting.
Becky,
Okay, Bob, the role of the capital planning is to review the projects and determine whether they're needed for the town and that they're reasonable. The finance committee's job is to handle the financing of those capital plan projects and talk about how to best finance, or if it's, too much to finance, mostly about how to finance things that come through capital planning especially. So I wouldn't agree that it should go back to capital planning, but I do agree that it does go, most likely I think this should go to town meeting.
Just to be clear, I slightly disagree with you that when we see projects at capital planning, they do have a price tag. So that's part of our evaluation, is that, I mean, it's not.
And it did, Bob, it did have a price tag. And if it was able to happen back then, it would have happened at that price tag and we would have been.
I understand, Walter, I completely understand that. But I'm just saying what the proper process should be. I actually feel it probably would be approved again, but it has to go through the right
No,
process. Don't you think?
no, I think
I don't know.
that,
That's why I'm coming to you guys. This is not my bailiwick.
Yeah.
You guys fight.
Susie,
So because nothing has changed as far as the specs of the job and it's still needed, I believe it's in our court, the FinCom, to propose various ways to finance the difference of 31,000.
yeah, I would tend to agree with that, and I think it's really up to town meeting and the town to decide whether they want to go ahead and authorize that or not, right? And that's what the town meeting would be about. Yeah, Susie,
Town meeting, special town meeting would be one way. We also have the Finance Committee Reserve Fund, and it is meant to meet unexpected costs. And it's within the balance that we have. We could do it that way. So those are two different options. If we do a special town meeting, the cost of a special town meeting would have to be added into this equation.
AJ,
Are there any other anticipated needs for a special town meeting between now and our annual town meeting? Like, is the library project going to require, no. So there's nothing anticipated at this point where we could tack this as an additional item for a special town meeting that we would otherwise need to have? No. I don't know why I thought there was one. Okay.
Yeah, we have one potential other issue, but it hasn't been confirmed that it can go to a special town meeting. And we've been trying to make, so if the finance committee is to consider a special town meeting, we have a very, very small window to do it in, because the process that we use for town meetings is still outdoor, and the weather is changing, and if we can't do this in January, we would want to try to get it done by the 23rd of October.
I mean, the paving season ends pretty much the
Right.
middle of November.
Right.
If we have a good year. If it gets really cold, it shuts down quicker, which is what happened the first year. Got delayed because of Concom stuff.
yeah, Susie, and then Bob.
So if the FinCom voted to take it out of the FinCom reserve, and then any other unusual expenses come up beyond the 75,000 that's on that line, we could have a special town meeting later, and we would be able to meet the paving schedule if we appropriated that money right out of FinCom reserve.
I think Bob, and then unless Becky, Becky, are you replying to Susie's comment, or and then Bob? I'm sorry, Bob.
So Susie, I think the problem we have is we have not yet figured out how to hold a special town meeting once it gets cold. And so that would have to be solved. And it's something Grace is working on, and we've reached out to Paul to talk about the potential for this one, and FinCom is, I'm sorry, not FinCom. So it's could be, we could have a later winter special town meeting. We just have no clue how that would happen yet.
Bob,
Yeah, I just want to say, Walter, this is you're right. This is getting close to the end of paving season because it's going to start getting too chilly to lay it down properly. But why is there any reason why the fire station couldn't handle getting through another winter and paving, getting this organized next year? I mean,
Not really, other than it's been this long doing it. And what happened this year in anticipation for this, because Tim had, when they had to rent a mini excavator for work over on lot 032, he figured it was a great, piece of equipment. While they had it, they had to rent it for 5 days. They finished that project earlier. They had some time left. So he decided to rip up what was left of the, failing asphalt on the rest of the thing. So now the whole thing is, sand, mud, pit. So it will just mean if we don't do it, it just means there's, that much more destruction done to it during the winter when it's plowed. And it's going to be harder for them to be doing the plowing around the station. And it's just more mud and sand and all that that's constantly being tracked into the station. Other than that, no, there's no reason why it can't be. It's just, we've been enduring this gravel parking lot and all the dirt that's tracked in and what it's done to the rugs and the floors and everything else. So just hoping to try to get it done
Sure, I understand.
as possible. Yeah, we go through another year, we'll just regrade the whole parking lot again next year. Oh,
Right. Yeah, it's too bad that it had to get strung out, but just thinking in terms of the scheduling for this fall, that might very well end up in a bad situation with weather too. So, getting late in the year, Walter, as you know.
yeah, well, we've been working at it and, unfortunately, the prices of everything have gone way up. And
Yeah.
so that's
Yeah,
why,
I would think there's.
that's why we're coming to you guys to say, hey, this is where it is. It's your town, it's all of our stuff. It's how you want to deal with it. I'm just presenting it because this is what's, what we feel is best to have done, but how you guys want to handle is up to you.
Well, another thing to consider when we talk about a delay is where a price is likely to go in the future. And I don't know, petroleum is a pretty.
They're not
tight-
going to go down, I'll tell you that.
Well, I guess that's my point. Petroleum is a pretty strong link to, I think, paving. And then I don't see any indications that petroleum prices are going to be going down anytime soon. If anything, they're going to be going in the other direction for quite a while, going up like most other things or a lot of other things.
Yeah, if you look at the prices of even propane, the Selkirk market, it's actually really spiked in the last month or so. So, and I don't know if that's going to go down much at all either. So,
Yeah. Okay, Les.
Quick question, how much money is actually in the FinCom reserve fund?
Is it 75,000?
There was one, I think we had one transfer of about $1,500. I think it was. I'll look it up, but there's been one transfer.
Susie,
Could I make a motion to transfer the money out of the FinCom reserve fund? And then we would continue the discussion after that's seconded?
I'm sorry, continue the discussion after the motion. Is that what you were saying, Susie?
Mhm.
Okay, I'd second that.
So that's a motion to transfer, what, $32,000 or 31,816?
Yep, 861, or what was it?
816.
31,816. From FinCom Reserve Fund to this, does this the existing 25K? Is there a name for that fund that it's in right now?
Fire station paving.
Sorry, say that again?
Title 30, it's a fire station paving, it says.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, we moved 500 out of reserve fund according to what I see here,
Oh, that's
Becky.
right. That was the Concom.
Yeah, so we're at 74,500.
And I think the select board just asked, okay, so there'll be a request for another 1,500 coming for more of the same thing, the $500 for the fee for realtors to write up the reports to allow committee participants to participate in discussions around the solar project. So that would make it 73,000.
Okay. Any further discussion on the motion? Bob?
I was going to say, I'm not going to approve this because I think it should go through the channels that are set up, and it should go to town meeting. It shouldn't go through. So it should be a discretionary. It's not an emergency. I know that's going to be annoying and kind of irritating to Walter and the department, but I think given the fact that it's late in the year, probably wouldn't be wise to pave it now. But anyway, I think that the 31,000, which is more than double the original request, is significant, and it should go through a process where the town meeting gets to approve it. It shouldn't be made discretion from our fund. That's my opinion, so I won't support this motion.
Okay, any further discussion? Yeah, Jim?
So this doesn't have to be voted on if we take the money out of FinCom reserve. Is that what is being said?
Yes.
We have to vote on it as a committee, right?
Um,
But the town won't have to vote on it. Is that what you mean?
Yeah, but I'm still confused as to whether such a vote to spend this amount of money, which is a large amount of money, is required.
That's
Do you
That's
mean
what
the
the big-
town,
Go ahead, Becky.
Jim, required?
Well, required, in other words, whether there's, yeah, can we just shovel FinCom money out the door, until it's all gone? Or, I mean, this is a large amount of money and does it require a town meeting vote? I'm not, from all the discussion, I'm still not clear on that.
I believe the answer, and you guys are the FinCom, you should know, but if you have the reserve fund, you have your reserve fund, if you so choose to vote to spend it, then you have the ultimate say of it, and it doesn't have to go to town meeting. If you're looking at morally to say to spend this amount of money really should go to a town vote, then the answer is yes.
Yeah, okay.
No,
Right.
you guys can vote to spend whatever in your reserve fund that you so feel you do. That's your power to do.
Yeah.
That's why you have that reserve fund, if I understand right.
Yeah, Susie?
And I think that the town supports paving the fire station. And the fact that it's been taking time and delayed, and now the price is up, before the price goes up again, I feel like we can manage this by a FinCom reserve transfer, so we can vote.
Are you sure the paving can take place, considering the bad weather or wet weather we've been having and the coolness and all the rest of it? Are you certain that this project could be accomplished this fall? Walter?
I haven't approached the company because I can't approach them, until we know if we're gonna,
Yeah.
do anything. But typically, yes, they pave right into November. They're doing road projects now. They're doing all kinds of paving projects.
Oh, yeah.
They do so right up until they shut the plants down, and the plant shutdown is dependent on weather. If it gets really cold and stays cold early, they shut down earlier, but typically they stay open till about Thanksgiving. So they are doing paving up until Thanksgiving.
Mhm.
If we get
Walter,
to fund the project, then we can award the bid, and then it's whatever it takes them to get their scheduling together to do it.
Wouldn't
I
it
think
be more-
Go ahead, Jim.
Wouldn't it be more ideal to wait till the spring when it's much drier? I mean, there's an awful lot of moisture on the ground right now, and that is not good for being underneath pavement. Just a question.
I think Becky had her hand up, and then Melody.
Did Walter want to answer Jim's question?
Mhm.
Or is it
About
not?
moisture, I really I don't know. I'm not an expert on paving, whether it takes, whether a lot of moisture in the ground is good or bad. I mean, we're going to have it set up, and it was a request by Concom and by DEP that we leave a strip of area alongside the building between the front on the west side. We're going to leave a 2-foot area that we're going to fill in with, crushed stone to allow water to go in and still travel through that area. That was a request. So there is always going to be water going or moisture underneath that. I don't know if the amount of rain that we've had just recently is going to affect that amount for paving. I'm not an expert in that. I can't answer it.
Okay, Melody, and then Susie.
Can
Unless,
I-
Becky, you're going to reply to that point?
I had my points. I just didn't want to interrupt before the other point was done.
Okay,
So
and then
my-
Melody, and then Susie.
So can I speak now?
Yes, please.
Okay. I have apprised the two paving companies that whether or not the project can happen this year will be discussed at the Finance Committee meeting tonight. And they are kind of standing by waiting for that answer. So That's the answer to that. And the last thing, reading from the Finance Committee policy book, it says the Finance Committee may accept and approve a transfer request if, in its discretion, the time delay and cost of calling a special town meeting to approve a line item transfer is not justified.
Yeah.
Just to give you some context from your policy.
Yeah, Susie, I'm sorry, Melody and then Susie.
Yeah. Hi, Walter. Nice to meet you. I don't think I've ever met you before.
Nice to meet you too.
Just a quick question, just for my clarification and understanding. I'm imagining that this job is not going to take that long. So like, we're not even going to be going into Thanksgiving, right? I mean, what does it take? Maybe a week, couple days?
2 days, 2 days. It's
2 days?
scheduled for 2 days only because we're requesting a base coat and to let that set overnight and then the finish coat. So they will do this whole project in 2 days.
So then waiting to Thanksgiving is kind of a moot point, because obviously if this gets approved, this will be done well before any cold weather. Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
Susie,
I feel like issues around moisture and temperature are part of the asphalt company's expertise. And if they accept the bid, then they will make decisions about those things. If they find it not working because of the weather, they'll change it. But I don't think we can speculate on those needs because we're not asphalt pavers.
yeah, Bob,
2 points. One is the quality of an asphalt job is highly dependent on the conditions when it's laid down. The best time to lay down on asphalt is August. You get diminishing returns the colder it gets because it doesn't set properly. We've seen roads that were paved here, and they do pave up to Thanksgiving, where they've crumbled and they've broken down. And it might be the preparation, but in many cases it's the weather that causes a poor adhesion in the asphalt material. So yeah, there is time. That's number one. If it's going to be cold, it's going to affect the quality of the job at the end. The second thing is, these people aren't just waiting to come in tomorrow and do this paving. We're going to have to get in their schedule. And so I don't know what that means exactly. Becky probably knows, could speak to that. But the third thing is, this is a lot of money, and I think it should go to town meeting. It shouldn't be spent out of a discretionary fund. I understand the argument you're making, Susie, but I don't agree with you.
yeah, a couple, just from my perspective, 2 things. One is it's a project that needs to be done. And then the second is pricing there's no indication pricing is going to go in the downward direction. If anything, it's going to continue to go up or stay the same. Maybe a suggestion is we modify the motion slightly. I just throw this out there to say contingent on ability to get this project completed this season, this paving season. Because I'm sorry. Because if it's not done in this paving season, then we're going to get into next spring and we'll be getting close to town meeting anyway, aren't we?
I think that the bid itself, that the pavers have signed, I believe I had a November 15th deadline. I have to check.
Okay,
But in the bid itself, it said that it would have to get done this season.
okay, so there's no need for this change to I'm just trying to address Jim's concern,
Yeah,
but it's already in the agreement.
yeah.
All right.
Where's my paving contract?
Any further discussion? Go ahead. Okay, I'm sorry, AJ.
Just a quick point, I think I think we're all concerned about cost. But I mean, we've got to keep in mind that there would be an additional cost to holding a special town meeting. And I think for that reason, I'm going to support the motion when we get around to voting.
Okay. Can we start vote? And Melody, without George being here, I think you would kick us off on voting. Congratulations.
Wow. Chartier, aye.
Hemingway, I'm going to abstain on this. I'm still uncertain about it.
Okay, I think we missed Bob.
Bob,
Okay, I'm going to vote nay on this.
all right, Cashew, yes.
Mosier, yes.
Walton, yes. Okay, motion passes. Did you catch all that, AJ? The vote?
Yep, I got it. Motion passes 4-1 with 1 abstention.
Yeah. Yeah, before we move on to the next agenda, Todd, let me just throw this out. Maybe Becky, I would think this could be an issue if there's projects that have been approved in prior years, but we still haven't gone through bidding processes. There's going to be this potential that when we do get around to these projects, that they're going to be outside of the price range that we originally agreed to. Is there, I don't know whether this is a capital planning committee topic or where this sits, but should we be looking at a review of any open approved capital projects that we haven't gone through the bid process on and see if we have some other potential issues here?
I don't think we have other open projects that haven't moved ahead, that have been, I think this was, maybe there's a balance in the sidewalk project, but work was done, so that doesn't, I think they want more work to do. So Jim, I think it's a good point, and we should highlight that if there's any talk about moving forward on a project that hasn't been reviewed, hasn't gone out to bid recently, because we had, they put together all the numbers on the original bid. So it's not like it was never bid.
Yeah.
So no, I'll keep that in mind and review the list of things that have passed town meeting and make sure we don't have any others in this situation. And if we do, we'll talk about them some more and figure out if going out to bid is the best thing to do or what.
Yeah. Okay, thanks, Becky. Les?
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
So this is a relatively random question from the peanut gallery here. I was doing a little bit of research on the capital planning committee, and the last time I see that they have minutes listed is April of 2021. And also on the website, there was no listing of capital projects pending, proposed, approved. And at least to the general public, I think this is a real shame, trying to get an understanding of where the town's capital planning project process is going forward. I was planning on raising that question at the capital planning committee meeting, but that meeting this evening was not held.
Yeah, Becky.
Is it okay if I answer his question, Jim? I know it's off topic for this committee.
I'm okay with that, Becky.
Okay. All I wanted to say is that capital planning starts meeting in early fall and finishes before town meeting, usually a month or two ahead, less. And so the final minutes of the year sometime often have to be approved at the beginning of their new season in the fall. So that's a typical pattern. And as you know, there are 2 members of the capital plan on finance. So they can share your concern about having more information listed on the capital plan page, which has never had any work done by the committee to date. So they can discuss whether they want to start utilizing their page in the future and put the capital plan there and list other projects. Okay.
AJ, was your hand up?
Yeah, I agree that the capital plan document probably should be posted on the committee's website, and I'll bring that up at our next meeting.
Move on.
Thank you, AJ. Okay, can we move on to the next agenda topic?
I just
And
want to take,
Walter, thanks for your time.
I just wanted to thank everyone for their discussion on this and support. So thank you.
Okay, thank you.
And
Hey, Walter.
I mention one other thing. I think one reason we're really hoping to get it done this year is Walter is still holding to his June 30th retirement date. And this is one of those things I think he's hoping to finish up before he finishes up. So thank you, everyone.
Walter, you're too young to retire. Come on.
Should we name the parking lot after him?
It's not just the age, Bob. Believe me.
Okay.
All right. Okay, can we move to, we want to review the minutes from our last meeting from our September 22 meeting that AJ sent us a day or so ago, a couple of days ago.
Big Monday.
Yeah. I took a look. I don't have any changes myself.
Looks good.
Anyone else?
I think Becky's name is on there twice. I saw that, so I gotta just fix that. Other than that.
And I didn't even complain. Sorry.
Susie?
Guess I was a little confused on number 5, because B says we plan to finalize the letter at our next meeting, and then D says submit the budget request letter form as amended. So I think we got it done at that meeting. I'm not sure if we have any more to do at this meeting.
I hope not, because it's in everyone's boxes.
We're done. Yeah, I think we finished it and we voted to support that letter.
Good.
Yeah, I think we all supported it, but I guess I had this impression that maybe we were going to talk tonight about just getting it issued or getting it wrapped up, but if Becky's already a step ahead, it's already done.
I think there might have been some mention of that Susie would draft the schedule, and that would be sort of a part of the package that goes out, so people know when they're, but I guess that happened, you know, Susie, you did that last week, I think, right? So.
Yeah, and we talked about trying to get it out quicker than waiting through this meeting and then beginning that process. So it's done. We're done. Yay.
Yeah. So Becky, the letter didn't just go up, but also the schedule, the dates for each individual that went with it.
With the second column clearly in it, so they do last year and this year's Susie's tabulated calendar and the letter that you guys approved at the last meeting. I put it in everyone's boxes, but I'm just emailing out the committees and department heads. So they're getting the digital version now, but it's been in everybody's boxes since Monday, I think.
I'm just going to add a note in the minutes that the letter and meeting schedule has been sent.
That's not really reflective of the minutes though, right? Is that something? I just throw that out there. We don't.
Well, I guess
shouldn't the minutes just reflect what we actually discussed during the meeting as opposed to what's happened since then? I mean,
yeah, sometimes I add a note if, like, you know, like for example, if there was something, I'm trying to think of a good example where we've done this before. When there's some sort of useful update to an item on the minutes that has since occurred after the meeting, I'll sort of add it as just a bracketed note. So somebody who reads this, I guess, might get confused by the mention that we're going to approve this at the next meeting, but then there's a vote in the meeting saying that it's been approved. So anyway, yeah, I think it's a good idea to just clarify that.
yeah.
Okay, good. So I make a motion to approve the minutes as they are. And amended, I guess a little bit amending.
Is there a second? I'll second. Okay, and if we can vote without unless no further discussion.
Okay.
Chartier, aye.
Hemingway, aye.
Rose abstain.
Hemingway, aye.
Cashew, eye.
Moser, aye.
Walton, I. Okay, speaking of the calendar that Susie put together, did everybody have a chance to look at that? And if not, do you want to take a look? Or if so, are there any questions? Concerns?
So Melody, just to confirm, you're okay going back to Tuesdays, starting December 14th?
Correct.
Okay.
I didn't see it, Jim. Is it something you sent me?
Yes, yeah, I sent it to everybody on the committee, a week and a half or so ago.
I missed that.
We can put it up here. I have it.
I made you a co-host, Jim, so you could.
Okay, so why don't I share it with everybody? I think it'd be worthwhile, just to make sure we're all on the same page as far as upcoming meetings and what's on the agenda for these upcoming meetings.
You know what date you sent that, Jim?
Let's see, I'm gonna share screen. Okay. So this is what I sent to everyone about a week and a half ago. This is what Susie had put together per our agreement at our last meeting. So we kick off the department budget discussions with highway and police on December 1st. And then the next meeting, December 14th, would be fire and library. And then January 11th, it would be the elementary school budget.
Are we sure they'll be ready? Like, is that a little earlier than last year? Or?
No, I don't think
Nope.
so. This is very close to the numbers of last year, the same order and close.
Okay.
We try to do highway before the weather gets bad.
Yeah, I should have asked, can everybody see the schedule here on the screen?
Yes, I can see it.
Okay. The next one would be treasurer and assessor on January 25th. Accountant, collector, February 8th. Broadband on the 22nd of February. Capital planning, March 8th. And then warrant articles, one of the last weeks of March. And right now, the annual town meeting is planned for April 30th. Bob,
I just want to say, we've discussed this in the past, but I want to just bring it up again this year. It's useful for a committee and certainly for me to get the documents, the request from the various departments well ahead of our meeting with them, so we can discuss what's there and investigate whatever's in the request that might be of interest to the committee. So I don't know if it's in the document that you've been sending out, Becky, but it would be useful for the committee. Again, we discussed this in the past, and I think we all agreed that we need to get this information ahead of the meeting with the principal at the FinCom, so that we have had time to look at it, investigate it, and discuss it. So is that something we're going to do this year? Is my comment question here.
Okay, I think, Bob, that what we don't do is we don't have, the finance committee does not review the budget without the principal party who has written the budget. And I think getting the budgets ahead, we've been doing a better job at. So getting the budget ahead and emailed to finance committee members, a few days before the meeting or a week is what we've been trying to do. But the other part that you added, that the finance committee would be discussing the budgets ahead of meeting with the staff, is not something that I've heard that the finance committee has moved their practice to.
Well, again, it's just a matter of due diligence. If we are going to be talking about and scrutinizing and reviewing budget requests, we have to have the information. We don't just, I mean, I've been to meetings where we never saw the request until we met with the principal, and then we haven't had time to look at it, to think about it, to discuss it. And so that's just not a good way to do business, in my view. You need time to do a careful consideration of what you're looking at. So I hope that we can get the thing well ahead of our meeting with the principal. I think that in some cases, we've had more than one session with some of the departments because there have been questions that needed to be answered or investigated, or there have been changes in circumstances, like, for example, with the school, so that things had to be addressed that were not obvious at the first go round. So again, not being able to see it is really critical, to be able to see it before we meet with the department head.
And as I said, we have all embraced the effort to get the budgets to the finance committee ahead of your meeting to discuss that topic.
Right, but I want to reiterate that because we've said it in the past that an effort is not good enough. We need to actually be able to do it. That's what we need to do. We need to be able to review the information ahead of our meeting with the department head, okay? So I just make myself more clear, because it's not an effort, it's actually should be part of our process.
Okay, I think Susie and then AJ.
Yeah, we did bring this up at the last meeting, and that was a concern that was talked about, getting the budgets ahead of time. I also wanted to mention that the 4 town meetings and the all board meeting aren't on here, so members should be prepared to be meeting more often than this particular calendar shows. And then when I was doing it, it was a little startling to see that annual town meeting right now is April 30th. We don't know how life will be in the spring due to COVID, but with annual town meeting being on April 30th, people need to plan for extra meetings to help get ready.
I can't imagine we're not going to meet a hell of a lot more than what's on this paper.
Okay, I think AJ was next.
Yeah, I just wanted to remind everybody that I just was looking at my email. Last year, we got a email dump of like about 10 of the budgets on November 25th. So I think we did a good job last year of getting the budgets in advance. I think there were a couple of exceptions, like the school. I mean, we know that that's not going to be ready, in November, but I mean, I'm seeing we got the library, highway, treasurer, collector. I think we got the bulk of police. We got the bulk of them, like in late November last year. So hopefully we'll be able to do that again.
Yeah,
Great.
Okay, any other comments regarding the calendar? And also, the request that Becky put out is we're requesting this information to come in by the end of October. I think that's the way you worded it, Becky?
yeah.
No, okay.
So hopefully, I mean, we're pushing it,
Yeah.
we're getting it out earlier, which makes it more likely that we'll get them earlier.
Yeah.
That will play into improving the amount of time you have to review them.
Yeah. Okay. All right, next topic. We have free cash stabilization and capital stabilization. This is one of the more general agenda topics we all agreed on that we want to cover about this time frame, and really it's really about having an initial discussion about amongst the committee members about thinking. Now, this is a discussion, we have a lot of discussions, I think, in the past in meetings about levels of free cash or levels of stabilization or levels of capital stabilization and whatnot. So this is more of an open agenda item to just kick off this discussion for this year, to maybe we can start to come to some consensus on, or some understanding, some common understanding of how we're going to proceed with regard to these account levels.
Can you make us bigger again? We're little tiny.
Oh, okay, we can do that. You don't want to look at the calendar anymore.
I got the calendar.
How's that? Is that better?
That's better, I guess, yeah. I can see everybody.
Susie?
Our process is, we can have a motion, can be seconded, and then we can open it for discussion. And I feel like there's a positive benefit to that because it helps frame what we're going to be discussing. So, so I would like to make a motion about this discussion. And if I don't get a second, then we do it another way. But I'd like to make a motion to endorse the policies outlined in the town of Shutesbury's municipal finance guidelines that were approved by the select board in 2018.
So that's a motion. Jim?
Oh, we have to have a we haven't gotten to the discussion stage yet of this?
There's no second yet.
No,
I'll
Yeah.
second that. I'll second that.
Yeah, I was going to suggest a possible slight change or an addition or whatever, and that would be, I think anything, well, we do have a second, so we're in discussion mode, but thinking that any changes that we can agree to a change as a committee, although I'm not sure what the process is. Does the select board, is this as far as making changes to a handbook?
No, this is
As
not,
far as policy changes, what is the process for policy changes if we were as a committee wanted to go in a direction of making a change in policy? Becky?
I think at this point, so this is a document that was reviewed by both committees, the Finance Committee and Select Board, and others and capital planning members as well. A policy is under the direct authority of the Select Board. It's a Select Board vote. If you wanted to make recommendations for a change to the Select Board would decide whether to entertain those changes or not.
Okay. So if we as a group wanted to promote a change of some type, we would need to petition the select board to take up that cause.
Yes.
Okay, got it. Thanks. Bob?
I just want to put a different interpretation on this. I think that we, as a finance committee, our fundamental responsibility is to the taxpayer. And given any given year, we can make recommendations to that affect the level of our reserves in any way we consider to be reasonable and represents the interest of the town. There's no legal requirement for us to have any free cash or any stabilization or cap stabilization. We have requirements we have guidelines from the state of 3 to 5% for free cash. And now we have guidelines from the select board's financial handbook. Guidelines, I emphasize, not strict requirements. We still get to deliberate and to make recommendations to town meeting. And they may or may not be consistent with those guidelines. So I think we still have a responsibility to think and act and exercise our authority as FinCom and to represent the interest of the taxpayer. I personally have made my views known about about the cash levels that we have, and so I won't repeat that. But I'll just say this: that interesting to me is that you need a 2/3 vote to release money from the stabilization accounts. The stabilization accounts, as far as I understand them, particularly the capital stabilization, is for big projects such as the fire department paving and fire trucks and the school roof and the lot. But that requires 2/3 vote, which I think is appropriate in a democracy to have a consensus to support major purchase like that. I don't understand why or how a large purchase can be made from free cash. It seems to me it should go through the vehicle of the capital stabilization account and be put to the test of a 2/3 town meeting vote in order for large sums to be spent. So I'm a little concerned about that issue going forward because we have a massive free cash account, which has a much lower threshold than the cap stabilization. So I don't know what the rest of the committee thinks about that, but I think that's an issue that should be looked at.
Yep, Susie.
I'd like to highlight aspects of the policies that the select board approved. I suppose if the FinCom wants to break policy and put that in front of town meeting, they can represent that they're doing that. But there's 4 financial policies that, well, actually, I'm not sure everybody on the committee understands where this policy guideline came from, but there was a grant that allowed the town to choose a topic they wanted to get support. The state offered these grants and the select board chose to get one on financial planning. And so then Joe Markarian, who had worked for DOR, and he came and he went through a process. I think it might have been 6 meetings, I'm not sure. And the finance committee went through an education about best practices. And together they worked out the details of the policy, and then it got voted by FinCom and Select Board. So there's many times a small town of volunteers needs some expertise, and that's what we got from choosing that state grant. And the product is a coherent idea of what has to happen. There are 4 financial things. One is the free cash should be around 10% of the budget. The second one is that stabilization should be around 5% of the budget. The third thing is that the town encumbers should be between 5 and 10%. And the fourth thing is that the FinCom reserve should be no less than 1%. This is about being prepared and being able to meet what a bunch of volunteers try really hard to know, but don't always know. And that's not just our not knowing, that's also capital plan. That's also a delay in a contract like we faced today. That preparation, that ability to meet stuff has played itself out for us. When the free cash bumped up because the money to deal with the contamination at the fire station, that money had to be put aside. It was accumulated. And then through Becky's efforts, I think it's the federal government ended up paying for that. So suddenly our free cash bumped up because we saved it for the project and the project was handled by other funds. That money in free cash was available for the FinCom to recommend a tax relief in FY21. During the COVID, the beginning of the COVID period when people weren't sure how things were going to get managed, we had the free cash and we put it out there for the taxpayer. We had free cash to meet items in this year's budget, free cash and stabilization. And so the finance committee continues to try to put together packages of funding. And we're learning how to do it. And I would like to use the policy as our goals to get those 4 things established: free cash at 10%, stabilization at 5%, debt between 5 and 10%, and the FinCom reserves at not less than 1%. And I feel it's work in progress, and it benefits everyone in this town because we're prepared to meet situations that we haven't necessarily had the resources. Some of the projects that citizens had proposed would have spent out that money. Town meeting has turned those down. That's not a plan. Those are reactive ideas. We're trying to stick to a plan.
Mike,
Yeah, sorry, my video's not working here, but I just am caught on something that Becky mentioned about the policy manual and how to get it changed. And it didn't seem to make sense to me that the Finance Committee would have come up with a policy manual and then basically had their hands tied to make any changes to it once the select board had done their vote on it or approved it or anything like that. So it seems odd to me that that is the avenue to make any changes to the Finance Committee policy. And also, when Susie was talking about the Joe Markarian coming to work on this policy manual, I was still on the select board at that time, and I sat in on a couple of the meetings. And while she says that, you know, he came in with guidelines on best practices and everything, I distinctly remember one of the meetings I was at, he said that the Finance Committee could basically write the policy manual any way they wanted to, because that was what they could do. And the fact that we ended up with free cash being, 10% of the budget was not necessarily a best practice, because there aren't a lot of towns around that do that, but it was just something that the Shutesbury Finance Committee at that time decided was reasonable to do. So, I'm concerned that, you're tying your hands with the way the policy manual is. If it doesn't work, if it doesn't make sense, there's got to be a relatively easy way to change it. Thanks.
I think Becky had your hand up. Yeah.
So one of the backbones of municipal government structure is we have a select board. Select board is in charge of policy. End of story. If the select board doesn't approve policies, they don't become policies. So it's not that, the Finance Committee, if they have, grounds and reasonable changes they want to make, and they make recommendations to the select board will take them up. But it's still the select board's authority to support that. But every year, a lot of things happen between the Finance Committee and select board. They work closely together. So I don't think that's, it's not an unachievable or difficult bar. It just means that the Finance Committee is not in charge of the municipal finance guidelines, because it doesn't just cover their work. It goes beyond their work. It's about all the financial officers in the town. Mike referred to it as the Finance Committee manual. It is not the Finance Committee manual. It is the municipal finance guidelines. So, the treasurer, all our financial officers, including the assessor, all the work and all the guidelines are there for a number of people outside of the Finance Committee. Jim.
Yeah, thank you, Becky. Yeah, I think all 7 of us on this committee have our own bias when it comes to any particular topic that involves the town's finances. And I really applaud the foresight of the group that whenever this was done with Joe Markarian 4 years ago, 5 years ago, 6 years ago, to reach out to someone that wouldn't have a bias with regard to our town, and someone that also has a lot of municipal finance experience, enormous amount of experience. I I guess, challenge that probably more so than any of us on this committee here. To come out under this grant scenario and put together some guidelines that, I don't know, just reading through this, I find it hard to really find it hard to argue with or challenge. And even if we did decide we needed to challenge some of this, we can. There is a process, as described earlier. So I guess I'm thankful we do have a process, and we do have some guidelines. And I think if you look at the state level and what the state expects and defines the roles of municipal finance committees, one of the #1 priorities is following guidelines, is following rules. We really go down a slippery slope when we start on a regular emotional or biased approach to making the changes based on any given set of circumstances on any given day. And that is really one of our #1 priorities, is to have guidelines and to follow those guidelines. And again, if there are circumstances where we do as a group find that some of these guidelines maybe are dated or don't make sense to the changing conditions, we do have a process to come to some consensus on a change and then reach out to the select board to work with that change. Bob.
Yeah, I just
And
want
then
to say, first of all, I want to point out that we do have a government that's a democracy, and in that government, we have administrative people, the select board, the town administrator, the treasurer. The finance committee has a unique role because the finance committee does not represent the select board. It does not represent the town government. It represents the town meeting. It represents the taxpayer. It is actually a check on the town government in a way against whatever thing that the taxpayer may not want. And Joe Markarian, if you say he's not biased, I think you're very much mistaken. He is a very long time employee of the Department of Revenue. The Department of Revenue, look at the name, the Department of Revenue. They're concerned with raising money for state and local governments. And that's the wholly different matter. That's the different bias than that of the taxpayer, who's maybe concerned about how much tax he's paying. Joe Markarian and the Department of Revenue did not bring you Proposition 2.5. They fought against it tooth and nail. That was a taxpayer initiative that was meant to counteract the power and influence and biases of the Department of Revenue. I feel as a member of the Finance Committee that I have a very significant obligation to represent the taxpayer primarily. That, I think, was written into the guidelines for the FinCom from the state and in the charter for the FinCom. And so it's to say we need guidelines. Yeah, sure, guidelines are fine, but we have an obligation to examine the budget every year and to look at what's in the best interest for the health and well-being of the taxpayer and the town meeting. And that's how I see it.
Yeah, Bob, I think you might have mischaracterized my comment about bias. I said he doesn't have a Shutesbury bias. All of us have some form of bias based on our experiences. He just doesn't have a bias towards Shutesbury. He's looking at this as a municipality, and he would have that same approach across any municipality, and not just a Shutesbury. We all within our town here have a view. Some of us don't want any money in free cash, and some of us might want limited or limitless amounts of free cash. And that's based on our own personal needs or biases. And that gets taken out when we have an independent person come in from outside the town and focuses on what should a town be looking at for finances. I'm sorry, Jim, you had your hand raised.
Yes, it seems to me from my reading of our financial regimen or requirements that Joe Markarian's recommendation about maintaining 10% it was something he said to the effect, if you look it up, and I been sifting around through my papers here trying to find that specific reference. It was not that, it's a mandate to maintain 10%, but it's something that might be nice to have, that kind of thing. My second question is, do you know of anybody in the state of Massachusetts, any town in the state of Massachusetts that maintains 10% free cash? Because I'd like to know about it, because I haven't found any so far.
Yeah, you have Shutesbury.
Yeah, except for Shutesbury.
I'm sorry, Les.
Thank you, Jim. as you know, I've attended, several finance committee meetings over time. And this particular discussion, I can't help but thinking there's an elephant in the room when we're talking about these issues. And I'm struggling to find out what is the elephant in the room that is generating this conversation that is really abstract in a lot of different ways.
I think Susie?
I don't believe it's abstract at all. We're going to go into a budget year. Last year, there was discussion about how much money we had in each type of reserve and how to use it. And we said this year, we're going to have a discussion before the budget comes in front of us. And I think it's not abstract to say, I have a motion in front of us that says we endorse the guidelines and we will make an effort to get there, to use them. And some people are already talking about trying to change the guidelines. I see them as a coherent view, and I see it as policy that the select board stated, and I think it's a goal we work towards. And so that's not abstract.
But we can change these. That's the point that I think many people have been making up to this point. We can make changes to them if we see fit.
We can recommend changes to the,
Certainly,
to
yeah,
the
certainly.
select board.
Select board has to
Yeah.
vote the changes.
Mhm.
Yeah. AJ,
Yeah, I've made this point before, but I'll just reiterate it. In my view, first of all, no one has articulated the idea that these guidelines are binding and that they restrict us in our decision-making in any individual year. I mean, I think even the way Susie presented it today, they're goals. And so that's to the extent that we could accomplish them, it's good. But it's not as if we are, I mean, I'm fairly certain that there isn't a guideline in the handbook that recommends that we use free cash to reduce the tax rate in any individual year, right? And but we made that decision because there were extraordinary circumstances in that first year of the pandemic. So they're not binding, their goals. I don't object to the idea that these guidelines are periodically reviewed and that we can have a process where we recommend changes to them. I just don't like the idea of us kind of suggesting changes in a kind of ad hoc fashion. I feel like, as the policies that guide our decision making as a town, I don't object to us saying, we should review these every 5 years or have a committee that takes a fresh look at these every 5 years and produces a set of recommendations that both the FinCom and the select board can vote on. To me, that's kind of a more responsible way to talk about actually changing the guidelines themselves.
okay, there's Melody and then Kevin.
You're
Sorry,
muted.
having trouble with the mute unmute button. I just wanted to ask for clarification from Susie, because AJ, when you were saying it was a goal and not necessarily binding, what I heard Susie saying was that she wanted us to adopt it as policy, which isn't necessarily aspirational. So I'm a little confused, and it would be helpful to me to understand if it's policy, is that binding, or is it? I'm not understanding, because on the one hand, I'm hearing aspirational. On the other hand, I'm hearing policy.
Susie? If you're responding to Melody.
Yep.
And then Kevin.
So my motion was to endorse following the policies outlined in the Town of Shutesbury Municipal Financial Guidelines that were approved by the Select Board in 2018. When I came on this committee, I came after this report was written. I wasn't part of the process. I've read it, I've thought about it. I think that it was designed to be best practices and that it was an education process for those people that came to the meetings and participated all the way through. That's what I want to endorse. Have we met it all the time? I didn't feel like we had it in a clear focus last year, and there was discussion. I want to set up a clear focus this year, and I want to understand what the pieces are. And those are the four financial pieces that I would like us to be working towards.
Yeah, Kevin. And then
Thank
Becky.
you. Thank you. I'd just like to clarify some of the remarks I've been hearing. First of all, you need to know, I am a sworn agent of the Department of Revenue for the town of Shutesbury. Assessors take an oath to the state. Contrary to popular belief, the elected state Senate and House of Representatives makes the laws that Department of Revenue enforces, or in some cases are charged with explaining. Prop 2.5 is a great example. The governor's climate policy bill that took effect on June 24th, an example. The bill specified that within 9 months, the Department of Revenue had to issue the guidelines on how we tax solar in the future. Every assessor is waiting for that. The Department of Revenue's focus is not on collecting money. That's A&E, administration, or A&F, administration and finance. Second of all, the selectmen, as elected officials, are the chief executive officers of the town. You might notice that every year they approve the tax classification. That is setting financial policy for the town. That is their role and their job. They also have the power to look at a warrant, whether you're aware of it or not, and say, I don't want those articles on the warrant. And by a vote of 2, a maximum of 2, they can remove any article off a warrant except a citizen's petition. So when you make comments, you need to understand what people's roles are and what their responsibilities are. A finance committee is advisory only. You can say to the select board, we want to spend down all the free cash. The select board can vote and say, no, we're not taking that to town meeting. That's the roles and responsibilities. And I kind of sit here holding my tongue when people mischaracterize the roles of state agencies in various town boards and committees. Know the powers inherent in each position. Okay? The selectmen vote on the financial policies of the town. You don't like them, you got 2 options. Recommend a change or run for select board. That's my 2 cents.
Becky, I think you had your hand up.
I was just responding to Melody's question. She was saying that we were adopting, that the finance committee was adopting policy with that motion. And I just wanted to clarify this, and Susie already did, that the policy exists and is already part of our framework. So it's not new. I think Susie was just talking about following it this year more closely. But correct me, Susie, if I'm wrong.
Yeah, Melody, are you
Yeah.
on the same thread of discussion here?
Yes,
Okay.
I'm just responding to Becky. Thank you for that clarification. My question was really, is policy binding? Must we adhere to it, or is it aspirational?
Aspirational.
Okay.
Let's see, Mike, you get your hand up.
Yeah, thanks. Say, I'm kind of taken with what Kevin said, because I'm going back again to when I was on the select board, and there was one year that I was very adamant about what the budget was looking like, and I wanted to have the select board be basically reviewing the budget and making the final decision on the budget. And I was told that that was not the purview of the select board. And now, Kevin, you're saying that that is the purview of the select board. So it's very interesting, I guess, at what point in time what information you're given and how you need to proceed with that.
Becky,
Um,
and then Bob.
okay, Mike, that's specific to the Shutesbury Finance Committee bylaw, which has the responsibility of bringing the budget to town meeting, which is a little bit different than some other communities. So yes, Kevin was saying, and Kevin, correct me if I'm misrepresenting, but Kevin was saying that the select board has the authority over what warrants go on what articles go on the warrant. That doesn't mean that the select board has the right to overstep the finance committee bylaw and put their own budget on the warrant, which is the case in some other towns where the select board is responsible for the warrant. It just isn't the case in Shutesbury, and it's not the case because of the way town meeting wrote the Shutesbury Finance Committee bylaw.
You are correct,
well-
Becky. I stand corrected. I was speaking in generalities.
Okay, we've been on this discussion quite a bit, and I think we're starting to get into some similar arguments. And we need to wind this down. We're getting close to 8 o'clock. Bob?
Yeah, I just want to say,
Something quick?
I assume Kevin was referring to me as certain people speaking about the issue of the responsibilities of different departments. And yeah, I think just Becky partly sort of clarified that issue for us. But I just want to say, I never claimed, I don't think I was claiming a power for the finance committee where it doesn't belong. It's just that their role is to make recommendations to town meeting and to represent town meeting, which I think broadly means the taxpayers and not the government, but the town meeting. So I think that's a distinct role, and it has a benefit to the town in that it pushes back against some action from other departments. I think it's a healthy and good thing, but I think we have to take our role in that respect seriously, and that we are responsible for making recommendations to town meeting. Yeah, if the select board remove an article, that's maybe they can do that. If they do, that still has nothing to do with what we do. We recommend to town meeting what we think is appropriate and proper.
Okay, I think we're starting to go through prior discussion here.
I was responding to what he said, that's all.
Yeah. Unless there's something new, some new points. Can we wrap up this discussion? There's a motion on the floor or on the table or wherever we want to put it.
There's an empty chair. Is that Melody?
Empty chair. Yes.
Susie, I think you had written out your motion. Would you mind just reading it again so I can capture it?
Yeah. And I'll send it to you.
Yeah, that'd be great.
To make a motion to endorse following the policies outlined in the Town of Shutesbury Municipal Finance Guidelines approved by the Select Board in 2018.
I don't think it's necessary I think this whole motion is completely unnecessary. That's the way we've been working up to now. We know about these guidelines and we follow them and we debate about them. I don't think we have to vote again on this. I think that's just redundant. So I recommend we just withdraw that, Susie, I ask you to withdraw that
We
recommendation.
will not withdraw it. We can vote on it.
I think we're wasting our time voting on it. We should go on to something else, Jim.
Yeah, I think what I hear you saying, Jim, is that we have.
We've already done this,
We've got guys, okay.
There's a motion on the floor. I mean, it has to be voted on if she doesn't withdraw it.
Yeah. Okay, without any further discussion, unless there's another new point, let's go on with voting.
Chartier, no.
Bob, you're muted, Bob.
Groves, nay.
Hemingway, nay.
Cashew, yes.
Mosier, yes.
Walton, yes.
George is absent, so it's a split
Yeah,
vote.
3-3 tie, so. Does that mean, I forget, does that mean the
Does
motion
not pass.
fails? Yeah.
Okay. We can get into next agenda item, expense report review. I think we got this, Becky sent this out several days ago, maybe last week.
Yeah.
Um,
Does everyone have it?
Yep.
anything, anybody seen that raises question
I got
or
a question.
comment?
I got a question for Becky. I looked through it, Becky, and I couldn't find where the free cash was. Is that because it hasn't been certified and it's not in the expense report, or
Free cash is never in the expense report.
not? I see, okay.
Yeah, it's
Right.
never there. Capital stabilization, but
I
not.
found all those, yeah.
Yeah,
That's why I
and-
couldn't find it.
Right. And it has not yet been certified either. So I think we're waiting on one document before we can go to get it certified.
Thanks.
Sure.
Oh,
Has everybody taken a look already and just doesn't have questions, or are you all digesting the report and considering questions or comment?
the transfer to capital project fund, remind me about that, Becky, will you please?
Okay, so that is the second to last line on
Page 4, page 4.
Okay, so this one is $279,100. And I can get an exact breakdown from the accountant, but it's a clearing account where the things that we purchased at town meeting, and I think this is going to include the roof project. They flow through this line. So it's more of an accounting thing, and I will get the exact details of what's currently in it for you for the next meeting, or I can email it to you, Jim.
Okay, all right. I
So like the line under it, transfer to trust fund,
yeah,
that's where our, the $50,000 going into OPEB flows through there. These are where where the accountant moves the money into the appropriate funds.
mhm. So that figure, 512,695 is the amount that's in the OPEB fund, or will be once the transfer is made.
It's not just the OPEB fund, though.
Oh, it isn't.
No, that 512 would be other things as well, because our OPEB fund balance is,
894 or something.
it's over 600. Maybe it's the last page. Sorry, 1 second. OPEB trust has $694,223.57. So that's,
There's an additional 50,000 in there, isn't there, Becky?
well, see, right now it's still in the fund that Jim was talking about. It hasn't been
Okay.
moved into that fund yet.
Okay, so that hasn't transferred in yet. That's just budgeted, the 50,000, but it isn't actually in there.
Right.
Okay.
But I can ask for a detailed breakout of that for the next meeting, Jim.
Okay, thank you.
Melody,
Yes, this is just a very minor question, curiosity under town government. Why is the police chief holiday pay separate from the salary? And what is that?
That was an element of his contract when, in the prior chief, where holiday pay was added to his base salary. And to make sure that it wasn't omitted or neglected, we put it as a separate line to make sure that we could follow it when it got paid out. Because it varies from year to year. It depends on whether or not a chief works a holiday or not. So,
Okay,
and that varies, like Dan Fernandez tended not to work holidays. Tom Harding works some, depending, and they all work the 4th of July because more work was needed at the lake. But, so we just split the line out to watch it when he got that new piece added to his contract.
okay, thank you.
This is a little off topic, I realize, Becky, but can you give us an update on the Lockspawn Road culvert, when this construction is likely to begin?
I do not have a complete answer yet. The latest update, what we went through last week was the discovery that although we got all the design work accomplished at National Grid, I contacted them asking for an update on the paperwork to see if they could email it to me directly, because traditionally National Grid's only uses snail mail. So when I called them with that request, I was notified that their next step was to send it to Verizon, and Verizon has 30 days to get it back to them. Okay. And there's a second piece. The second piece is they were sending information to us to say, to petition the town to hold a hearing and go through a whole process that can take 2 weeks. So in reading statute and working with Donna McNichol, she told me that it's only an alteration. It's not a new pole. It's the movement of a pole. And her interpretation of statute is we do not need a poll hearing, that the select board simply needs to sign the petition at a regular select board meeting. That information can save us 2 weeks. This morning, after getting to be very familiar with the Verizon folks and Joe Comerford's office also reaching out to them, I received the petition emailed back to me from National Grid, signed off by Verizon, which I think is a minor victory if we can keep it moving. It also turns out that for another reason, well, for the reason of the asphalt, I had the select board scheduled a select board meeting for tomorrow night. Tomorrow night's meeting will now include the poll petition so that they can sign it. And my hope is as soon as I notify National Grid of that tomorrow, I'm hoping they can begin their scheduling because they will receive the signed paperwork on Friday. So I'm not sure. I think we have half a shot to get it done. That the poll might be moved within a week or so. And if that happens, the project can move forward.
But it's ready to move forward on other front, on all other fronts. In
It
other
has
words,
been-
MAS is ready to go.
Yeah, they've been ready to go since August 7th. I'm sorry, September 7th. I keep saying that wrong. So that's that update.
Okay, thank you.
Sure. And
Bob,
Yeah, how about, as long as you're on the subject of updates, how about the HVAC engineering bids? How's that going?
I'm still haven't received the last one, so I'm gonna have to go crazy on them. So I have nothing, Bob.
Okay, Susie,
Where are we in the process for the state to pay for the application for the state to pay for the rest of the roofing?
They have not, we have not heard a word from the NBLC. No,
Do we
that's
have-
library folks. SBA.
Do
We
we-
don't know. They're still silently working through their process.
Do they have a season that we would expect it to be decided in during time?
The typical is the applications are due in February.
Oh,
Results start coming out in May.
oof.
They did not take applications until June. And June, yeah. Yeah, so they totally skipped that. So they're 6 months off. At least,
And counting.
and counting. So if you were to say 4 months from June, we should be seeing something shortly. And hopefully we will.
okay, we've wandered off topic here a little bit. Anything,
For your
any
indulgence.
other questions, comments, concerns on the expense report?
But these were very useful comments, I might add.
Oh, yeah, and maybe we should have a
Yeah.
separate comment section.
Not a bad
Um,
idea.
Becky, anything that you see in the expense report we should be, you want to point out or that you think we should be aware of?
Straightforward.
Not at this point. I think we're okay. Things are looking pretty good. I want you guys to know that our new land use clerk is, who started on September 20th, is doing well. She's gone through her first Conservation Commission meeting last week. She's getting trained by Penny Jakes and Linda on different things, since Penny is most familiar, having been the temporary clerk. And so that process is working out. We're very hopeful. She had her first planning board meeting last night, and she's never used Zoom before, but has gone, hopefully the next meeting or so, she'll be hosting the meetings, and things are moving along. So that's one position that is solidifying.
Okay.
So I-
Thanks.
Yeah,
Yeah.
the numbers for the land use clerk are a little, they'll probably be a little higher than normal. So it's one to keep your eye on going, through the year. They might need support, especially if the solar permits ever start to move.
Okay, thanks. Thanks, Becky. Becky, earlier in the meeting, you mentioned that we might be seeing another request for maybe a transfer. You mentioned $1,500, and I guess that wasn't completely clear what we might expect. Maybe a little bit more detail on what that was, what we might see coming.
So as you
ahead.
know that with the planning board at town meeting, it was supported that they add to their budget $1,000 to pay for 2 potential members, so that they could go through the ethics commission required what are they? Their evaluations of their property to deem whether there's a conflict of interest or not. We've had a number of people do them. The one the finance committee just signed off on was the Conservation Commission chair, Miriam DeFont. And as you all know, I think Melissa Makepeace is in a butter, and she has been getting through a process to get her final report. Unfortunately, well, the circumstances have turned, so Melissa now owns 3 properties in town, and just by luck, all 3 are abutting Cole's property. So now she's in the process. Select board asked that she go out, and she's trying to get a quantity discount on her real estate reports. But the select board has asked her to go ahead and get the next 2 done so that she can participate in the select board conversations. So that's $1,500.
Okay, that's something we might see in our next meeting or two. We might see a need to.
Yeah.
um,
But I
go
don't
through
want
that.
to rush it because there's hope she will get that quantity discount.
Oh, wow. Okay, good luck.
I would hope. Yeah.
Okay, anything else regarding expense report? We get into committee reports.
Capital
I don't
planning,
have any.
AJ.
Sorry, Bob? Oh,
Capital
yeah, nothing from us.
Report.
Sorry about that, guys.
No problem.
We haven't had a first meeting yet.
Is there a full committee within capital planning? Are you fully, you have a full team?
Yes.
Okay. Susie, you look like you were ready to go on school.
Yeah, they haven't had a meeting since our last discussion.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, and Melody?
Yeah, the personnel board met on September 30th. We began a review of the, oh my gosh, I can't read my own writing, sorry. We did something, review of wages and salary. We began an initial review of wages and salary, and our next meeting is October 21st, when we're going to have reviewed the FERCog wage and salary report. And I don't have minutes from that meeting, so I can't give you more detail, but Becky, feel free to jump in if I've left anything out.
I think we looked at the Board of Health job
Oh, yes,
job description and gave that the final approval with the Board of Health changes.
that's right. Thank you. The Board of Health clerk, we looked at. Yeah.
Yeah, so we should be, that's going to get advertised very shortly. And just so the Finance Committee knows, you will not find a budget line for the Board of Health clerk. It has always been paid out of grant funds that they receive every year.
Okay. Susie?
So Becky, will that grant fund be able to fund an increase if that's what it turns out will happens? When you go out into the marketplace to look for somebody, will the grant be flexible enough to cover an increase?
Yes, it would.
Okay, Jim, anything from on broadband or?
No, our meeting, not since the last meeting when I told you about the 911 situation, which AJ made a reference to in his minutes. But our meeting is coming up and there's been no additional concerns.
Okay,
Except for,
Except for the polls. That's why I asked the question, because we're concerned about our fiber and what might happen to it with Verizon and National Grid, moving things around down there could cut off the entire lake area if they're not careful. So we are concerned. We're watching that very closely.
yeah, and Gail is
Yeah, and Gail is too.
Gail is very much working with everyone.
Yeah.
Bob,
Just a little appreciation. I had the Verizon DSL on the Vineyard. It went out twice. And then when it went on, a download rate was 6 BPS or MPS. So it was like ridiculous. It was like Fred Flintstone down there.
Wow.
Oh.
So thank God we don't see Verizon trucks around here.
Yeah.
nice. Anything else on committee reports? Anything else that anyone wants to, outside of our agenda, any other topics that, oh, Susie?
So we did have update FinCom calendar. And I can see that there's 2 items that we tentatively said we would look at. The 25-year plan review from capital planning and solar projects and other potential revenue sources. Both of those were scheduled for September on our list. Do we want to try to get to those?
Yeah, my opinion on the first one, the capital, that 25-year plan, we probably really need to have the capital planning team meet before we get into that, don't you think? There really hasn't been an update on the 25-year plan for a while.
So
Yeah.
So is that on the
Great.
capital plan agenda?
I was going to suggest that AJ, and I'll put that on the agenda, or we'll
Yeah.
bring it up when we meet in the short, in this near future, right? Right, Brenda, Becky?
Yeah, and I update the capital plan with projects that are approved at town meeting. So those get, so they get indicated how much they actually cost. And so on that end of what things actually transpire gets updated every year.
Yeah, so what's the thinking? Do we want to, you all will have that on the discussion on the agenda for the next capital planning meeting, and then you'll have something maybe to report back to us after that meeting?
The next capital, we still have to do the organization meeting first.
Right, but we could put it on the agenda for the first meeting beyond that, that we'll
Right.
talk about the long-term plan.
Right.
What does that mean, organization meeting, Becky?
Just to determine, to get their letter out to the public, to the department heads, sort of like what you guys were doing a month ago.
Okay,
Your letter, getting your request out, reviewing what happened last year. And,
okay.
and then, yeah, I'm sure Bob and AJ will get back to you guys on it.
Yeah. Okay, Susie and then Jim?
So we had a brief discussion about developing the 25-year plan to at least indicate that review of culverts, roads, dirt roads and bridges isn't in there right now, and yet it's a pretty big capital expense. And I saw the municipal vulnerability chart, and they also indicated that dirt roads and culverts and bridges are part of vulnerability, especially in climate change times. So I just don't know if, so when I brought this up a while ago, like 2 or 3 meetings ago, it wasn't well received. But I don't know if somehow whether it gets initiated by capital plan, but actually I'm just trying to ask them to open up what they see for issues that we don't have specifics, but I believe we should probably consider something. And I don't know if anybody else saw the municipal vulnerability chart, but we might see if there's anything in there that has financial implications.
If it's related to roads, Susie, wouldn't that be something that Tim and his team should be going forward to the capital planning team on? If it's got to do with dirt roads or repairs or those types of things?
My point of view was that we should make sure that the townspeople are aware that there's a view of what needs to be done. I don't think, I'm not looking for specifics from Tim, and I do think Tim deals with the specifics, but the townspeople should understand that dirt roads, culverts, and bridges are a concern for living in town, and just that there's financial implications to taking care of that. I don't suggest that we have to have a plan for all the roads, but I just think capital planning might want to mention that this exists as a concept.
Well, all roads in town require financial planning in a way. Maintenance is required for all of them, regardless whether they're dirt or paved. Well, anyway.
I think that you both hit on it, and so did Becky the last time this was brought up. The highway department maintains the roads. And if they have a big capital project, such as repairing a bridge or doing major reconstruction, they'll have to come to capital planning to make a proposal, and then it'll go through the process.
Yeah.
That's how I see it.
Mhm.
Yeah, Susie, you mentioned something about solar.
That's on the chart. It's on the chart under total revenue expense, long-range modeling forecasts. The second item is solar projects and other potential revenue sources.
Yeah. What's the thinking on that as far as how we want to, when and how we want to broach that subject?
When
What's
you're
the
feeling
context?
lonely at your meetings,
I'm sorry, say that again, Becky?
I said, whenever you start feeling lonely at your meetings, because just the word solar brings at least 20 people.
Yeah.
20 to 50.
Yeah, yeah, that's a good warning right there.
Mhm. Okay.
We, the finance committee, don't decide about these, it's not really part of our purview, is it? To, if the town is going to get involved in the solar project or not. When do we get involved? When do we get to weigh in on that? Not at this stage, I would imagine.
Well, actually, the pilot agreement is handled by the select board. They're the contracting body as the CEO. I think revenue resources, investigating sources of revenue could always be considered part of the finance committee purview in general. And being aware of potential revenue sources should be, like the new the new cell tower appears to be moving along. When I tracked down the National Grid guys, by chasing them down Wendell Road, they ended up at the cell tower site, and they were there because they were working on getting electricity into the site, which is a sign that potentially will be coming forward. So I know Kevin has been tracking the cell tower and its potential for like revenue, as because of it'll be a new asset, a tax-paying asset. It might also have a pilot, but I think it's important for the finance committee to be aware of potential revenue streams that the town might take advantage of.
Yeah, I think when I put this on here, I thought this would be part of that modeling process that we went through at our last meeting.
Okay.
And that would be, if we see these potential new projects coming along, this is where that modeling that we spent some time 2 weeks ago, we would put that model to use to look at the impacts of these different scenarios, these revenue sources or scenarios, and how that would impact the town's finances. Does that make sense? Or,
yeah. But I think it should always be a topic for the finance committee if they hear of things.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the things we talked about 2 weeks ago too, right? That modeling, we can always, that's something that should be, whenever appropriate, we can bring that up and use that during upcoming meetings.
Yep.
I think Susie and then Jim.
And there's sort of a big idea to think about, which is if more revenue came in, it could go into different directions. It could go to lower taxes. It could go towards a fund that's meant to help meet municipal vulnerabilities. It could go towards a roads program to repair roads that, with the flooding and the rain and the climate change, there are dirt roads that are impassable. And what is the responsibility of a town when they have a road, the school bus can't get down, the residents can't get down? So I feel like there is sort of the bigger idea, where does the money go? And so far we've met our budget, and there's different things in that budget, whether it's meeting wages or whatever, but it's also an issue about whether we let that money just get sucked up to keep the tax rate down. And somehow that discussion seems pretty important to me.
Okay, Jim.
Yes, here's a hot topic. We ought to spend some time considering whether we ought to back out of CPA. CPA has built up a ton of money that they have no way to spend, $300,000, and we could do that and thus bring down the tax rate for everybody in town, which might be well received by most of the taxpayers, if not all of the taxpayers in Shutesbury. That is going to be a hot topic, but I think it's one that should be considered in the near future.
Okay, we're coming up on our timeline here. Next meeting, do we want to plan for 2 weeks from now?
Sure.
Me,
6:30 on the 20th?
Mhm.
okay. I'm
Does
writing
that
it
work for everybody?
Yep.
Okay. Anybody want to make a motion to adjourn?
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
I'll
Second.
second.
Okay. Melody, want to start?
Chartier, aye.
Groves, aye.
Hemingway, aye.
Cashew, aye.
Mosier, aye.
Walton, aye.
How
Okay.
about them socks?
Yeah, let's go Sox. Is this a best of 5 or best of 7?
5.
It's a
Five.
5. Okay.
I'm out of here.
So they got,
Oh,
The Yankee fan is leaving this conversation.
ah, oh,
Good night.
you looked a little pink. You'll have a good one.
Take care.
Good night.
Yeah,
Good
good
night.
meeting.
Well, okay, well,
Good night.
good. Go Sox. I'll see you in a couple of weeks. Good night.
Yeah, take care.